My name is David, and I used to be a man of simple pleasures. I lived in a modest suburban neighborhood where the lawns were neatly trimmed, and the streets were lined with maple trees that turned a fiery red in the fall. I was married to Lisa, a vibrant woman with a laugh that could light up the darkest of days. We had been together for nearly a decade, and I often thought of us as the perfect couple. We shared the mundane joys of life: Sunday morning pancakes, movie nights on the couch, and the occasional spontaneous road trip. Lisa worked as a school teacher, pouring her heart into shaping young minds, while I spent my days in a cubicle crunching numbers for a local accounting firm. We didn't have extravagant dreams, but we were content. At least, I thought we were. Our lives took a turn when the local fire department hosted an open house. I remember the day vividly: the smell of smoke in the air, the sound of sirens in the distance, and the sight of firefighters in their gear looking like real-life heroes. Among them was Jake, a tall, muscular man with an easy smile and a charm that seemed to draw people in. He was the kind of guy who made you feel safe just by being around. I watched as Lisa interacted with him, her eyes sparkling with admiration. I shrugged it off at the time, thinking nothing of it. After all, what's a little harmless admiration? As the weeks went by, I noticed Lisa's increasing interest in the fire department. She would often come home excited about community events, mentioning how Jake had helped organize them. I was proud of her enthusiasm, not realizing that it was masking something more sinister. The signs were there, but I was too blind to see them. The late nights at school, the sudden need for me time, and her distracted conversations were all warning bells that I chose to ignore. I trusted her implicitly, believing that our bond was unbreakable. Looking back, I wonder if I was too comfortable in my own little world, too wrapped up in my routine to notice the cracks forming in our relationship. I had always thought that love was enough to keep us together, that trust was an unshakable foundation. But as I stood at the edge of that world, I had no idea that it was about to crumble beneath my feet. The day I discovered the truth was a day like any other. I returned home early from work, eager to surprise Lisa with her favorite dinner. The house was quiet, too quiet. As I moved through the living room, I could feel an unsettling tension in the air. I found her phone on the kitchen counter, buzzing with notifications. I picked it up, thinking I would just check the time, but curiosity got the better of me. I opened her messages and saw his name, Jake. My heart raced as I read the exchanges, the flirty banter, the inside jokes, and the blatant confessions of affection. It felt like a punch to the gut, the air knocked out of me. I stumbled back, my mind racing with disbelief and betrayal. How could she? How could she do this to us? To me? The moment she walked through the door, I confronted her. I could see the shock in her eyes, the way her face paled as she realized that the facade had crumbled. The argument that ensued was a whirlwind of accusations and denials, a cacophony of hurt feelings and shattered trust. She tried to defend herself, but I couldn't hear her excuses over the sound of my own heartbreak. In that moment, I felt like a stranger in my own home, a prisoner in a life I thought I knew. The love I had for her turned into a boiling rage, mixed with a profound sadness that threatened to engulf me. I was no longer the man who believed in love and trust. I was now a man betrayed, a man who had to confront the painful reality of his wife's infidelity. The confrontation was a whirlwind, a chaotic storm of emotions that left me standing in the kitchen, feeling utterly hollow. Lisa's face was a mixture of guilt and defiance, her eyes darting away from mine as if she couldn't bear the weight of my disappointment. The kitchen, once a warm gathering place, became a battlefield where every word felt like a dagger, piercing through the trust we had built over the years. "David, please, let's talk about this," she pleaded, her voice trembling. I could see her trying to maintain her composure, but the facade was cracking. "I didn't mean for it to happen. It just did. Just did," I echoed, my voice rising. "You think that's an excuse? You think I'm going to buy that? You were texting him, Lisa. You were laughing with him, sharing things with him that you should have shared with me." She opened her mouth to respond, but the words failed her. Instead, she looked down, ashamed, and I felt a rush of conflicting emotions. I was furious, yes, but there was also an overwhelming sense of loss. The woman I loved, the woman I thought I knew, was slipping away from me. I trusted you, I said, my voice now quieter but no less intense. I thought we had something real, something that could withstand anything, but you, I shook my head, unable to finish the thought. It felt too heavy, too painful to articulate. I love you, David, she finally said, her voice breaking. I made a mistake. I was confused and I didn't know how to handle it. Jake. He was there for me when I needed someone to talk to. Jake. I spat his name like it was poison. You mean the firefighter, the hero? Is that what he is to you? Some kind of knight in shining armor who swoops in when things get tough? What about me? What about the vows we took? Her silence was deafening, and the weight of it pressed down on my chest like a heavy stone. I had always thought of love as a shield, something that could protect us from the world, from temptation. But now, that shield felt like it had shattered into a million pieces, leaving me exposed and vulnerable. I never meant for it to go this far, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. It was just flirtation at first. I didn't think it would turn into anything serious. But then he made me feel special, like I mattered. Special. I scoffed, my anger flaring again. And what about me? Did I not make you feel special? Did our life together mean so little to you? As we stood there, the room felt suffocating, filled with the remnants of our shattered dreams. I looked at her, really looked at her, and I saw someone I barely recognized. The woman I had shared my life with seemed to be fading away, replaced by a stranger who had betrayed me in the most profound way. I don't know what to say, she finally admitted, tears streaming down her cheeks. I'm so sorry, David, I never wanted to hurt you. But her words felt empty, like a hollow apology that couldn't repair the damage done. The realization hit me hard. I was not just losing my wife. I was losing the life I had envisioned for us. The future we had planned was now a mirage, slowly disappearing into the distance. In the days that followed, I found myself replaying the moment of discovery over and over in my mind. I had thought I was a man of reason, someone who could navigate the complexities of love and trust. But now I felt like a fool, blind to the signs, oblivious to the cracks that had formed in our relationship. I began to question everything. How long had this affair been going on? Was it just a fling, or was there something deeper? The uncertainty gnawed at me, a relentless ache that wouldn't fade. I tried to piece together the timeline, but every memory felt tainted. The dinners we shared, the vacations we took, they all felt like lies wrapped in a pretty bow. One night I sat in the living room, the silence so thick I could almost hear my heart breaking. I stared at the family photos on the wall, pictures of us smiling, laughing, and celebrating life together. They felt like ghosts now, haunting reminders of what once was. I felt betrayed not just by Lisa but by the very idea of love itself. How could I have been so naive? I knew I had to confront Jake. The thought of facing him filled me with a mix of dread and anger. He had invaded my life, my marriage, and I couldn't let him get away with it. The firefighter who was supposed to be a hero in my community had turned out to be a villain in my life. I felt a burning need for closure, for answers, and maybe even for revenge. As I wrestled with my emotions, I realized that I couldn't let this betrayal define me. I had to take control of my narrative to reclaim my life from the ashes of this affair. But how? I didn't have the answers yet, but I knew I had to act. I couldn't let my house burn down without a fight. The days that followed the confrontation were a blur of raw emotions. I felt as if I were walking through a fog, each step heavy with the weight of betrayal. Lisa and I barely spoke. The air between us was thick with unspoken words and unresolved tension. I found myself retreating into silence, my thoughts racing as I tried to make sense of everything. Lisa would occasionally attempt to reach out, offering apologies and explanations, but they felt insubstantial against the backdrop of what she had done. I never meant for this to happen, she would say, her voice laced with desperation. I love you, David. I want to fix this. But her words rang hollow, echoing in the empty spaces of my heart. I spent my nights tossing and turning, replaying our life together in my mind like a broken record. I thought about our first date, the way her laughter had filled the room, and how I had felt the moment I realized I wanted to marry her. I remembered the vows we had exchanged, the promises of love and fidelity, that now felt utterly meaningless. The hardest part was seeing her in our home, a constant reminder of the betrayal that lingered in the air. I could hardly stand to look at her. The sight of her brought a surge of anger and sadness that threatened to consume me. I felt like a stranger in my own life, a ghost haunting the remnants of what once was. One evening, as I sat alone in the living room, I heard Lisa's voice from the kitchen. She was on the phone, speaking softly, her tone almost pleading. I couldn't help but eavesdrop, my heart racing as I strained to catch snippets of the conversation. "I know I messed up," she said, her voice shaky. "But I need to figure things out with David. I can't lose him." The realization hit me like a punch in the gut. She was still thinking about Jake. Even in her attempts to salvage our marriage, he lingered in the background like a dark cloud. I felt a surge of anger, a primal urge to confront her about the conversation, to demand answers. But I held back, not wanting to give her the satisfaction of seeing me unravel. Instead, I turned my focus outward. I needed to confront Jake, the man who had weaseled his way into my life and shattered my world. I began to gather information about him, asking around and piecing together his story. The more I learned, the more I felt my anger simmering. He was everything I had once admired, brave, strong, and charismatic. But now, those traits felt tainted by the betrayal he had inflicted on my marriage. I learned that Jake had been a firefighter for several years, hailed as a hero in our community for his bravery during a recent wildfire. People spoke of him in hushed, reverent tones, calling him a savior. But as I listened to their stories, I couldn't help but feel a sense of irony. Here was a man celebrated for saving lives while simultaneously destroying mine. It was during one of Lisa's late-night outings that I finally decided to confront him. I knew she would be at a gathering for the fire department, a social event designed to showcase their latest achievements. I felt a rush of adrenaline as I drove to the venue, my mind racing with thoughts of what I would say. Would I confront him? Would I scream? Or would I simply demand answers? As I arrived at the fire station, I was struck by the vibrancy of the event. Laughter and music filled the air, and the smell of grilled food wafted toward me. But all I could focus on was the rage bubbling within. I pushed through the crowd, scanning for Jake. The firefighters were mingling, sharing stories of their heroics, and I felt the knot in my stomach tighten. Then I saw him standing by a grill, surrounded by a group of admirers, his laughter booming over the noise. He looked every bit the hero with his broad shoulders and confident demeanor. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what was about to transpire. I approached him, my heart pounding in my chest. When he turned to face me, his smile faded, replaced by a look of confusion. "Can I help you?" he asked, his tone casual, as if I were just another face in the crowd. "Yeah, you can," I said, my voice low but steady. "We need to talk." Jake's expression shifted, a flicker of recognition passing through his eyes. "About what?" "About my wife," I said, my words dripping with anger. "About what you've done." His demeanor changed instantly, the bravado fading as he took a step back. "Look, man, I didn't mean for it to happen. It was just a fling, a mistake." I interrupted, my voice rising. "You think that makes it okay? You think you can just walk away from this?" A few heads turned, curious about the escalating tension, but I didn't care. All I could see was the man who had stolen my wife's affection, the man who had shattered my trust. "I didn't ask for this," he said, his tone defensive. "She came to me. I thought she was unhappy. I never meant to hurt you." "Didn't mean to hurt me," I scoffed. "You think that makes it better? You think you can just play the victim here? You're a coward, hiding behind your hero facade while ruining lives." The words hung in the air, and for a moment I felt a small sense of satisfaction. I had confronted him, but it was fleeting. The reality of the situation crashed down on me. Once more, this wasn't just about him, it was about Lisa too. "I want you to stay away from her," I said, my voice steady now, but the fire still burned within me. "I want you to leave our lives. You've done enough damage." Jake opened his mouth to respond, but I turned away, not wanting to hear any more excuses. I walked away, my heart racing, feeling a mixture of triumph and despair. I had confronted him, but it didn't change the reality of my situation. Lisa was still my wife, and the damage had been done. As I drove home, I felt the weight of my actions settle in. I had taken a stand, but it didn't feel like a victory. I was still left with the wreckage of our relationship, the memories tainted by betrayal. It was a hollow victory, and I knew that the real battle was yet to come. In the days following my confrontation with Jake, I found myself consumed by a mix of anger and confusion. I had confronted the man who had invaded my life, and while it felt good to assert my feelings, I couldn't shake the lingering questions that haunted me. I began to reflect on the concept of heroism and how easily it could be distorted. Jake, the firefighter, was revered in our community. He had saved lives, fought raging fires, and stood as a symbol of bravery. People looked up to him, often romanticizing the idea of the heroic firefighter, the man who rushes into danger while others flee. It was a narrative that had been woven into the fabric of our society, painting a picture of nobility and valor. But now I saw the cracks in that facade, the hypocrisy that lay beneath the surface. I couldn't help but think about how society often glorifies certain individuals without truly knowing their character. Heroes are celebrated for their bravery, but what about their moral choices? What about the lives they affect outside of their heroic acts? I felt a deep sense of frustration as I grappled with these thoughts. Were we so quick to idolize people that we overlooked their flaws? I recalled how Lisa had spoken about Jake with admiration, her eyes lighting up whenever she shared stories about him. She had painted him as the quintessential hero, someone who was always there to help, to save, to protect. But now I knew that heroism could be a double-edged sword. It could mask the darker aspects of a person's character, allowing them to hide behind a veneer of nobility while wreaking havoc in other people's lives. In my mind, I began to draw parallels between Jake's public persona and my own life. I had always considered myself to be a decent man, someone who worked hard and cared for my family. I had never sought accolades or recognition. I had simply wanted to be a good husband. But in this moment of betrayal, I felt stripped of my own dignity. I was no hero. I was just a man trying to make sense of a world that had been turned upside down. As I reflected on Lisa's infidelity, I began to question her judgment as well. How could she have been so easily swayed by the allure of a man like Jake? Was I so blind to her needs that she felt she had to seek comfort elsewhere? The thought stung, and I found myself grappling with feelings of inadequacy. Had I failed her in some way? Had our relationship become so mundane that she sought excitement in the arms of another? I spent long hours lying awake at night, wrestling with these questions. I thought about our life together, the moments we had shared, and the love that had seemed so solid. I remembered the laughter we had shared, the dreams we had built, and the intimacy that had once felt unbreakable. Now all of it felt like a distant memory, overshadowed by the betrayal that consumed me. One evening, I found myself at a local coffee shop, trying to distract myself from the turmoil within. As I sipped my drink, I overheard a conversation at a nearby table. A group of friends was discussing Jake, praising him for his heroism during the recent wildfire. They spoke of his bravery with such reverence, and I felt a surge of anger bubble within me. How could they not see the man behind the uniform? How could they celebrate someone who had so callously shattered my life? I wanted to scream at them, to tell them about the infidelity, to expose the truth behind the hero's mask. But I held back, knowing that it would only lead to more pain and conflict. Instead, I sat in silence, feeling like an outsider in a world that had once felt so familiar. As the days turned into weeks, I began to realize that my anger was consuming me. I couldn't allow it to dictate my life any longer. I needed to find a way to move forward, to reclaim my narrative from the ashes of betrayal. But how? The thought of confronting Lisa again filled me with dread. I didn't want to revisit the pain, but I knew I had to address the reality of our situation. I began to contemplate the idea of therapy, both for myself and potentially for us as a couple. I wanted to understand why this had happened, to dig deeper into the roots of our issues. I couldn't just sweep it under the rug. I needed to confront the truth, no matter how painful it might be. One night, as I sat in the living room, I gathered the courage to approach Lisa. She was sitting on the couch, her eyes red from crying, a look of defeat etched on her face. "We need to talk," I said, my voice steady but firm. She looked up, her expression a mixture of hope and apprehension. "I know I've hurt you, David. I want to fix this. I'll do anything." "Do you really understand what you've done?" I asked, my heart racing. "This isn't just about you and Jake, it's about us. It's about trust and love and everything we built together." "I do understand," she replied, her voice trembling. "I was lost and I made a terrible mistake, but I love you and I want to make it right." "Love isn't enough," I said, my voice breaking slightly. "We need to figure out what went wrong, why you felt the need to seek comfort elsewhere. I think we need help." Her eyes widened, and for the first time I saw a flicker of understanding. "You mean therapy?" "Yeah," I said, nodding. "I think it's the only way we can begin to heal. We need to unpack this to understand ourselves and each other. It won't be easy, but I think it's necessary." As we talked, I felt a glimmer of hope amidst the darkness. It wouldn't be an easy road, but perhaps it was a step toward rebuilding what had been lost. I realized that the journey ahead would require vulnerability and honesty, but it was a journey I was willing to take. In that moment, I knew that I had to confront not only the betrayal, but also my own feelings of inadequacy. I had to find a way to reclaim my own identity outside of this pain. The concept of heroism had been shattered, but perhaps it was time to redefine what it meant to be a hero in my own life. The decision to pursue therapy was a pivotal moment for us, a small flicker of hope in the darkness that had enveloped our lives. Lisa and I found a local therapist who specialized in infidelity and relationship rebuilding. As we sat in the waiting room for our first session, I felt a mix of apprehension and determination. We were about to embark on a journey that could either mend our broken bond or sever it entirely. The therapist, Dr. Harris, had a calm demeanor that immediately put me at ease. She guided us through the initial session, encouraging us to share our feelings and perspectives. I watched as Lisa spoke, her voice trembling as she recounted her feelings of confusion and loneliness that had led to her affair. There was a vulnerability in her words that I hadn't seen before, and for the first time I began to understand the depth of her struggles. "I felt so disconnected from you," she admitted, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I thought you were happy, but I was drowning in my own insecurities. When I met Jake, he made me feel seen again. It wasn't right, but in that moment it felt like a lifeline." As I listened to her, I felt a mix of empathy and anger. I had been oblivious to her pain, caught up in my own world. I had never realized how isolated she felt in our marriage, but I also struggled to reconcile her actions with the love we had shared. "You could have talked to me, Lisa," I said, my voice steady but laced with hurt. "We could have worked through it together. Instead, you chose to betray me." "I know," she replied, her voice breaking. "And I'm so sorry. I wish I could take it back. I never wanted to hurt you." As our sessions continued, we delved deeper into the roots of our issues. We uncovered patterns of communication that had led to misunderstandings and resentment. I realized how easily we had fallen into a routine, neglecting the emotional intimacy that had once bonded us. It was uncomfortable to confront these truths, but it was necessary. Dr. Harris encouraged us to express our needs and desires openly, fostering a space where we could both be heard. During one session, I took a deep breath and decided to share my feelings about Jake. "I can't shake the image of him," I admitted, my voice wavering. "He's the one who took my wife away from me. I can't help but feel anger toward him." Lisa nodded, her expression somber. "I understand. He's a reminder of my betrayal, but I want you to know that I chose you, David. I want to be with you, not him." "Then why did you let it go that far?" I asked, frustration creeping into my voice. "Why didn't you come to me?" "I was scared," she confessed. "I didn't know how to voice my feelings. I thought I could handle it on my own, but I was wrong. I thought I was protecting you from my insecurities, but instead I destroyed us." As the weeks turned into months, I began to feel the slightest glimmer of hope. We were making progress slowly but surely. We learned to communicate more openly, sharing our fears and desires without judgment. It was a gradual process, but I could feel the distance between us begin to close. One evening, after a particularly intense session, we returned home, both emotionally drained but hopeful. Lisa looked at me, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "Thank you for sticking with me, David," she said softly. I know it hasn't been easy, but I want you to know that I'm committed to making this work." "Me too," I replied, my heart swelling with a mix of love and uncertainty. "I want to rebuild what we lost, but I need you to be honest with me. No more secrets." She nodded, her expression earnest. "I promise. I want to be transparent about everything. I never want to hurt you again." As we embraced, I felt a sense of warmth envelop us, a reminder of the love that still existed beneath the surface. It was a fragile bond, but it was ours. We were no longer just husband and wife. We were partners in healing, navigating the complexities of our relationship together. However, the journey was not without its challenges. The specter of Jake still loomed large in my mind, and I knew that I couldn't fully move forward until I confronted him one last time. I needed to reclaim my narrative, to assert my boundaries and make it clear that I would not allow him to disrupt our lives any longer. With a newfound resolve, I decided to approach him again. This time, I wouldn't let anger dictate my actions. I wanted to assert my feelings without letting the rage consume me. I needed to find closure. I found out that Jake was attending a community event at the fire station, and I made my way there, my heart pounding in my chest. As I entered the building, I could hear laughter and chatter, the atmosphere light and festive. But I felt anything but light-hearted. When I spotted Jake, he was surrounded by friends, laughing as he recounted a recent rescue. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for the confrontation. As I approached, I felt the weight of my emotions crashing down on me, but I pushed through. "Jake," I said, my voice steady but firm. He turned, surprise flickering across his face. "David," he greeted, his smile faltering. "What's up?" "I need to talk to you," I said, my tone leaving no room for ambiguity. The laughter around us faded and the atmosphere shifted as everyone sensed the tension. "Sure, man, what's going on?" he asked, his casual demeanor slipping. "I want to make it clear that I don't want you anywhere near my wife," I stated, my voice resolute. "What you did was wrong, and I won't allow you to disrupt our lives any longer. Lisa and I are working on our marriage, and I expect you to respect that." Jake's expression shifted, and for a moment I saw a flicker of remorse. "I never meant to hurt you," he said quietly. "I thought she was unhappy. I didn't know." "Whether you thought you were helping or not doesn't matter," I interrupted, my voice firm. "You crossed a line, and I need you to stay away from her. I won't let you be a part of our lives any longer." He nodded slowly, the weight of my words sinking in. "I understand. I'll back off." With that, I turned and walked away, feeling a sense of relief wash over me. I had asserted my boundaries, and while it didn't erase the pain, it felt like a necessary step toward reclaiming my life. I had confronted my demons, both in the form of Jake and in the deeper issues within my own marriage. As I left the fire station that night, I felt a sense of clarity. The road ahead would still be challenging, but I was ready to face it. I was no longer just a victim of betrayal. I was a man reclaiming his narrative. As the weeks turned into months, the journey of healing became both a challenge and a revelation. Lisa and I continued our therapy sessions, slowly peeling back the layers of our relationship and addressing the underlying issues that had led to her infidelity. Each session felt like a step forward, but it also unearthed painful truths that we had to confront together. I learned to express my feelings openly, to articulate my fears and insecurities without fear of judgment. Lisa, too, began to share her vulnerabilities, revealing the struggles she had faced in our marriage. It was uncomfortable, raw, and often painful, but it was necessary. Each session brought us closer, a reminder that we were both willing to fight for our relationship. The shadows of betrayal still lingered, but they began to lose their power over me. I found solace in the small moments we shared, the laughter over dinner, the quiet conversations on the couch, the way she would reach for my hand as we walked together. It felt like we were rediscovering each other, learning to navigate the complexities of love and trust once again. One evening, as we sat together on the porch watching the sunset, I turned to Lisa, my heart full of gratitude. "I'm proud of us," I said softly. "We've come a long way." She smiled, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I know it hasn't been easy, but I want you to know how much I appreciate your willingness to work through this. I love you, David, and I'm committed to making this right." "I love you too," I replied, feeling the warmth of her words wrap around me like a comforting blanket. I know we have a long way to go, but I believe we can rebuild. We can redefine our relationship. As we continued to navigate the challenges, I found myself reflecting on the nature of heroism. I had once viewed Jake as a hero, someone who had saved lives and been celebrated for his bravery. But I had come to realize that heroism isn't just about public accolades. It's about the choices we make in our personal lives. True heroism lies in the ability to confront our flaws, to take responsibility for our actions, and to fight for the ones we love. In my own life, I had to become my own hero. I had to confront my feelings of betrayal and inadequacy, to stand up for myself and my marriage. I learned that strength isn't just about physical prowess or accolades. It's about vulnerability, honesty, and the willingness to face the truth, even when it's painful. As the seasons changed, so did our lives. We began to forge a new path together, one built on open communication and mutual respect. We celebrated small victories, date nights rediscovered, shared dreams reignited, and the intimacy that had once been lost slowly returning. One day, as I was cleaning out the garage, I came across an old box filled with mementos from our early years together, photos, love letters, and trinkets from our adventures. I felt a wave of nostalgia wash over me, and I realized that while the pain of betrayal had left scars, it didn't erase the love we had shared. It was still there, waiting to be rekindled. I brought the box inside and shared it with Lisa. As we sifted through the memories, we laughed and reminisced about the moments that had defined our relationship. It felt like a turning point, a reminder of the love that had once blossomed between us. "Look at us," Lisa said, her eyes sparkling with joy. "We've come so far and we're still here." "Yes, we are," I replied, feeling a sense of hope swell within me. "And we're going to keep moving forward together." As the sun set that evening, casting a warm glow over our home, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. Our journey wasn't over, but I was no longer afraid of the road. I had learned that healing takes time, but it also takes courage, the courage to confront our past, to forgive, and to embrace the future. In that moment, I realized that love is not just a feeling, it's a choice we make every day. A choice to be honest, to communicate, and to fight for what truly matters. I had faced my demons, asserted my boundaries, and reclaimed my narrative. I had let go of the anger that threatened to consume me, and I was ready to embrace the possibility of a brighter tomorrow. With Lisa by my side, I knew we could redefine our relationship, building a foundation of trust and love that would withstand the test of time. As I looked at her, I felt hope for the future, a future where we could both be our own heroes, navigating the complexities of love together. In the end, I realized that while the fire of betrayal had burned through our lives, it had also forged a new beginning. We emerged from the ashes, not unscathed but stronger, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Together, and as I held her close, I knew that we were on the right path, one filled with love, resilience, and the promise of a brighter tomorrow. This was our journey, and it was just beginning.